People keep claiming Matt Henson has been fired. He's the art director who made some controversial statements. There's no reason to believe he's been fired. And even at least one person said that their insider said there's no reason to think he's fired. So I don't know why people are trying to start a rumor that he's been fired, but it doesn't matter anyways. It wouldn't change the development of this game, Avowed. They already did the majority of the art related stuff with it. And I think we can just look at Avowed and look at the kind of red flags it has and just judge it off of that. And so, one of the things I want you to pay attention to, and this does have to do with the art direction, is you look at, okay, like the design of this character. If you look at the mask in particular, I'm sure it's kind of meant to be intimidating in some capacity, but it has this softened, cartoonish look to it that makes it look goofy, and it's because they aren't going for photorealism. So they have a kind of, it's like a kind of anthropomorphization that it's a little bit difficult for me to explain, where you make something look more cartoonish versus looking photorealistic. And we can see that with some of the character designs too. Now, this is one of the characters people like to bring up a lot. And the issue isn't, I wouldn't say it's so much that she's designed to look ugly, but she's designed to look extremely cartoonish and silly, and she's contrasted with a lot of photorealistic details. And so you get this weird inconsistency match thing, and it makes for a really poor stylized look, because you have these conflicting art design choices. And this is how you can tell it has really bad art direction, is this weird contrast that doesn't complement each other in any way. The world design, in a lot of ways, it kind of resembles the Outer Worlds. So some of the creatures that they showed off in the trailers and stuff like that, and it weirdly resembles the Outer Worlds to me a lot more than I think they actually may have intended. And you can tell how the levels are laid out. The levels are laid out in such a way that it's not like an open-ish world kind of a way. It looks very similar to the Outer Worlds, where it's like a series of connecting hallways that sometimes go into a bigger, slightly more open area. And I'm not saying it makes the game bad to do things that way, but this is like an iterative improvement kind of a thing compared to how the Outer Worlds was. And all of this, so like the art direction looks bad, is pretty much my main point. The world design, is a little weird the way that they did it in the Outer Worlds, and this looks kind of similar. And if you consider the kind of people behind Obsidian, some of Obsidian's better games. So this is a list of Obsidian's games. I'll try to show you all of it. But if you look at Obsidian's website and you look at all of their games, so they're better games. So like Fallout New Vegas, like all of these games on the bottom, I'm pretty sure. Pillars of Eternity, I think Stick of Truth, I think Tyranny, maybe not. All of these better games had both Avalon connected to it and Josh Sawyer. And so when you get up to the Outer Worlds, didn't have either of those people. and Avowed doesn't have either of those people. And in my opinion, the worst game by far that I played by Obsidian is The Outer Worlds because of how just awful the writing is. And it doesn't fill me with confidence when you have two people who are connected to some of the best games that Obsidian made, and one of them got fired from the company, and the other has nothing to do with Avowed. And so that's already another red flag. The Outer Worlds, the original Outer Worlds, it had a very progressive kind of, it's like written in a very progressive way. So it kind of criticizes capitalism specifically. And I'm not saying you can't criticize certain economic things, but the way they go about criticizing capitalism is they aren't trying to tear it apart and try to discuss possible flaws. So things you might criticize is like, okay, capitalism or free markets, they can kind of be dog eat dog world. If we're talking about free markets in general and like low government regulation, then there's like ethic problems that can arise. So like you can have companies that just pollute a tiny bit and then they all contribute to greater environmental problems, but because each individual company is just polluting a tiny bit, then it's not any individual company's fault. It's the combined industry that's causing environmental problems. And so if you don't have like government regulation interfering with the market in that kind of circumstance, then you have like water can be contaminated from companies dumping chemicals into water, and air can be contaminated because of too much smog and stuff like that. Or another possible criticism is like nepotistic hiring instead of merit based hiring. So you have someone that hires their son to be a manager and they're incompetent because they lack the real world experience to actually do the job, but they just get to be a boss because their dad owns the company. Like that's kind of a stereotypical thing. So they didn't go about criticizing capitalism in any of those kind of more nuanced ways where we could possibly see some common shortcomings that might leak in. Another is companies getting too rich and powerful and influencing political policy and stuff like that. So you can definitely bring up things like that and try to talk about them and try to have a conversation about them. And you could show a good ethical company versus a corrupt company and contrast things. And there's all kinds of ways you could discuss how free markets can be bad. BioShock, in its own way, it's more of a libertarian critique, but it criticized free markets and was way more nuanced about it than The Outer Worlds was. In The Outer Worlds, their idea of how to critique capitalism was to make it so everyone is just really stupid. Like grade, like below grade school level kind of stupid. So an example of this is in the first town that you show up in, there's a quote unquote plague. The quote unquote plague is that people aren't getting enough nutrients and they're just eating protein and no nutrients, and it's making them really sick, and so they're getting things like scurvy or other things and dying. And the medicine to help treat the plague is just multivitamins basically. And you figure this out really, really easily if you just talk to a few people, but they can't comprehend the idea of basic nutrition. And there's even a greenhouse where people are growing vegetables and all kinds of stuff outside of the city, so they could have diversified their potential food sources better. But like, they can't understand the idea of nutrition, like, very, like, you can intuitively understand nutrition. So humans are like hunter gatherers. You go out and you collect berries or whatever. You collect all kinds of plants that are edible, and you kind of figure out what you can eat, and you hunt things and you eat a bunch of different things, and you figure out, if something makes me feel bad, then it's bad. If something makes me feel good, then it's good. And then humans intuitively get this understanding that a certain kind of variety in your diet makes you healthier. And so they portrayed these kind of capitalistic companies in the Outer Worlds to be so stupid that they're below that kind of instinctual understanding that humans have. Like 60 IQ people or something, like barely able to breathe kind of level of intelligence. And if you're trying to, they have to make people look so stupid to even come close to trying to critique a system. And I know the game was meant to be comedic, but they push so hard in the comedy that it makes the whole thing, it like destroys whatever message they were trying to go for, which I think it was more of an anti-corporate greed, kind of anti-capitalistic message. I played through the game twice, and so I had a reasonable amount of time playing it. And the entire leveling system in the Outer Worlds made it so builds didn't matter, because by roughly level 20, you could do every skill to a moderately competent level. So then we get to Avowed. Avowed very obviously has millennial writing in it, with how the dialogue is in the previews. It's trying to be silly, kind of almost Guardians of the Galaxy, but toned down a tiny bit, like Marvel writing, where everything's all witty and stuff. And that does get annoying, even if it's a little bit toned down from that. And I mean, just in the preview videos that they've done like this, that's what they're showing us. So they're showing us this kind of millennial writing in their promotional previews. So if they don't want to leave that impression, they shouldn't have made their videos like this. They have millennial writing. They have kind of similar world design to the Outer Worlds. As far as the previews go, we know that the Outer Worlds had a really bad leveling system, which has terrible implications for this. They're only 2 employees that are consistently connected to all of their good games. One of them doesn't work there anymore, and the other has nothing to do with this. So what sign is there that this is going to be any good when you look at all of that stuff? And the Matt Hansen thing shows how ideologically motivated they tend to be. And I don't want to bring him into it too much, but it shows they do have these progressive political values, and they try to focus on it. And I think the Outer Worlds very much reflected that. And I get the feeling Avowed very much reflects that. If you look at the Steam page for Avowed, for some reason their first tag is an LGBT tag. I'm pretty sure some of the first tags you see on a game are picked by the developer. And so the LGBT tag being one of the first tags on the game implies that the developer picked it. And when I think about this stuff, I don't factor in how much gayness is in a game for whether or not I want to play it. It's a non factor, an insignificant, unimportant detail because it doesn't influence my interest in a story. It doesn't tell me how good the writing is. But when they're pushing it this hard, it makes me think that they're going for kind of tokenistic, stupid stuff instead of actually trying to put effort in writing and art direction. So everything about this game prior to release looks bad. And I'm not saying you have to jump to conclusions, but we shouldn't be basing our opinions off of what one employee does and stupid tweets, because there's plenty of evidence when you look at the game that just seem like random warning signals. And I'm saying that you shouldn't pre-order. You should watch someone you trust play the game, and you should try to make sure you're an informed consumer before you give them your money. However, I generally recommend not giving Obsidian money because it seems like since they got bought by Microsoft, they're just starting to hit dud after dud, like they're tripping up. So they're starting to have a worse track record. So that's why I would wait. Watch someone play it live, like on Twitch or something. Don't just listen to a review. Actually see the game for yourself so you can have an understanding of what the game is actually like. Don't just take someone's opinion for it. Like, try to actually judge for yourself, because I think Obsidian is like Bethesda now, especially where everything they do is going to be extremely questionable. So try to be informed before you buy the game.